Hello, everyone, and welcome to our state policy update for the week. My name is Jax James. I am NORML State Policy Manager. I also serve as the Executive Director for Texas NORML, and today I'm here to talk with you about some of the moving legislation across the country. There have been newly filed bills are advancing in different states, and so I want to keep you guys updated. And of course, I always want to make sure that even if I don't get to your state in the blog update today, that I can give you a personal update on what's going on in your state. So if you're watching, make sure that you comment where you're watching from, and I can come back and give you a rundown on what's going on in your state. So without ado, I'm going to go ahead and start with our update. You'll find the link for the blog post in the description of this live stream. So let's go ahead and get started. There's been some really great advancements across the country. And what I want to start talking about first is bills having to do with legalization. So first of all, in Arkansas, newly filed legislation HB 580 legalizes the possession of up to 2 ounces of cannabis and repeals the convictions of anyone convicted of possessing less than 2 ounces of marijuana. This is newly filed legislation. So of course, we encourage you to go to the blog, click the action alert link so that you can send a message in support of this effort. We have another update for you guys in Maryland. As you know, last November, a referendum was passed. Oh, there went my light. So hopefully you can still see me. I guess the battery on that is not lasting as long as it should. Anyways, back to Maryland. Last November, a referendum was passed that approved for adult use regulated market in the state, but they needed to still build out what does that look like statutorily. So House Bill 556 implements this voter-approved referendum by legalizing the production, sale, and use of cannabis. It allows up to as many as 300 retailers to operate in the state. Existing medical cannabis dispensaries apply for a dual license so that they can sell both the adult use market beginning in July, as well as continuing to sell to their medical cannabis patient. The bill also imposes a sales tax on the adult use cannabis products of 9%, similar to the rate that they charge for alcohol in the state. Products sold to registered medical patients will not be subject to taxes, and localities will not be permitted to impose additional taxes, nor may local governments prohibit existing medical dispensaries from serving the adult use market. In addition to this, the legislation increased the amounts of cannabis that qualified patients can possess and also permits them to grow 4 plants at home. Currently, the state's medical law does not allow patients to cultivate plants in their home. So these are some significant improvements and great guidelines for the program in Maryland. And the update here is that this bill has passed out of both chambers, but they did differ, mostly based on the tax rate. But the lawmakers finalized the language of HB 556 in conference, going with the 9% tax rate rather than the 6% tax rate. The bill now heads to Governor Moore's desk, who is expected to sign this legislation. So if you are in Maryland, definitely click that link to send a thank you to the governor there in the state of Maryland. Now, in New Hampshire, as you guys know, New Hampshire has been attempting to pass a regulated adult use market for a while there. It seems to have headway in the House, but then we'll stop in the Senate. And so here's the update as to where we are in this session. HB 639 has been amended so that adults 21 and older can purchase, possess, and gift up to 4 ounces of cannabis. It would be governed by the Liquor and Cannabis Commission. They would regulate the market, issue business licenses. Localities could limit or ban marijuana businesses from operating in their area. Within 18 months of enactment, the Department of Human and Health Services and the Commission would need to develop the regulations to allow existing medical cannabis dispensaries to apply for dual licenses so that they can also serve adult consumers. The update here is that HB 639 has passed the House, 272 to 109, and it now heads to the Senate for further consideration. The Senate has historically been the uphill battle for us, so I strongly encourage everyone in New Hampshire to click that link and make sure that you are participating in this action alert to create a regulated adult use market in New Hampshire. Now, before I go on to the medical access bills that I want to cover with you guys, I just want to remind everyone, if you're watching, to comment where you're watching down in the section below so that I can come back over, and any states that I didn't hit in this highlight here, I can go over with you, because of course, this is just highlighted legislation, new and moving legislation, but there are hundreds and hundreds of bills that we have action alerts across the state, and we definitely want to make sure that you guys are all, I said across the state, across the country. And I want to make sure that you guys are all able to participate in supporting as much of this legislation as possible. So let's go ahead and talk about medical access. So first of all, in California, SB 302 expands current law requiring specific healthcare facilities to allow for terminally ill patients to use medical cannabis within that healthcare facility. This legislation expands the law to provide access to patients that are at least 65 years of age and struggle with a chronic disease. This bill, SB 302, is scheduled for a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee on the 18th of this month. Now, in South Carolina, S423 authorizes the use of medical marijuana in South Carolina. Not only would it authorize the use, but it would also create numerous protections for registered patients, caregivers, and physicians. The bill did pass the Senate Medical Affairs Committee, but it did not advance from its chamber of origin by the crossover date. Typically, this would mean that the legislation is considered dead, but reports are saying that it is in legislative limbo, and the author, Senator Davis, believes that it still has the potential to pass this session. So I want to encourage everyone in South Carolina to continue to push for that effort to make sure that we can have a medical marijuana program in South Carolina that protects patients and caregivers. I'm sorry, my dog must hear something at the door. Hey, come here. All right. Sorry, when you're streaming at home, sometimes deliveries happen and dogs like to bark. So my cute little dog, Owen, is just letting me know that someone is here. All right, let's talk about my state, Texas. It was a big day yesterday in the Texas House. There's legislation, HB 1805, that amends the Texas Compassionate Use Programs so that physicians can prescribe certain products containing THC to patients that have chronic pain or for which a patient would otherwise prescribe an opioid. It also empowers state health officials rather than lawmakers to add qualifying condition. And the measures also replace the THC cap by dry weight with an institution of a volumetric dosing of 10 milligrams. HB 1805 was advanced by the House yesterday with a vote of 127 to 19. We had our third reading today to finalize that. And so it is now on its way to the Senate. There will be a few enrollment processes before it gets there, but we've gone ahead and updated our action alert. So if you send a message in support, it will go to your senators to go ahead and pave the way for this legislation in the Senate. Just a side note, currently in Texas, there are only 55,000 Texans that are participating in the program. This would definitely increase that number and make it more available to more Texans who desperately need access to this therapy. So before I go on to some additional bills I want to cover, I'm going to come over to your comments over here, see where you guys are watching from. We've got, let's see. Ohio, Connecticut, Maryland, Indiana, Utah, Minnesota. We got some people from Texas, Michigan. All right. Awesome. I'll come back because there are a few more bills that I want to highlight here that are not necessarily in the update today. Because again, today's update is newly filed and moving legislation that we want to highlight. So let's talk about some additional bills that are moving across the country, coming back over to that. In California, we've got SB 51 that would authorize the issuing of provisional retail licenses to local cannabis equity patients for applicants for up to 5 years if the applicant meets the requirements of the department. 51 was unanimously passed by the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee and is now pending a vote in the Senate Appropriation Committee. In Colorado, HB 1279 permits residents to purchase marijuana products online with the opportunity to pick up their products or have it delivered to their homes. This bill is scheduled for a hearing in the House Finance Committee tomorrow on the 13th. So definitely make sure if you're watching in Colorado that you participate in that action alert. Now in Maine, we've got LD 1530, which authorizes on-site cannabis consumption at certain medical dispensaries. In order to comply with new regulations for on-site consumption, a medical dispensary must administer the product after obtaining a permit from the department and creating a space physically separate from the dispensary or the prescription site. A few bills that are also on the move in Maryland. We've got HB 232, which redefines child neglect status so that parents' cannabis use can no longer be considered prima facie evidence of a crime. This bill has passed the House and the Senate and now heads to the governor's desk. Additionally, HB 1071 prohibits the odor of cannabis and the suspicion of possession of cannabis, the presence of money near cannabis, from being considered probable cause for police to search a person's vehicle. This bill has also passed the House and Senate and is now heading to the governor's desk. In Missouri, we've got HB 425, which seeks to authorize financial institutions to provide services to organizations that participate in the state licensed marijuana industry, basically allowing for banking. This bill has passed the House Financial Institutions Committee. And newly filed legislation in Pennsylvania, SB 538, permits or expands the Pennsylvania medical program to include other edible formulations beyond pills, tinctures, and liquids. So these are some great bills that are moving and filed across the country. Really great news for everybody. I'm coming back over to the comments so that we can go over what's going on in some of the states for you guys, the viewers today. So I saw Connecticut. Let me come back over to my handy dandy spreadsheet. There are quite a few bills in Connecticut that you can participate in an action alert there. And just to let you guys know how you can find all of these action alerts, go to norml.org/act. You'll see a dynamic map on the page, and you can just hover over your state and it will pop up all of the action alerts that are ongoing in your state. So no matter when you're watching this, you too can go and verify and see what's going on in your state. So in Connecticut, we've got bills having to do with modifying sentencing, early release. There's one that we oppose that would repeal legalization, one that we oppose that would reinstitute odor as a means for search. We do support one that has to do with the establishment of cannabis cafes and restaurants. And we also oppose one that has to do with a THC cap. So definitely some interesting things going on there in Connecticut. Now let's see. I think we also have some people watching from Ohio. Now there's one bill we're tracking in Ohio that has to do with per se limits for those driving and having cannabis in your system. I went over Maryland, so you guys have that information. Now Indiana, I believe that session is coming to a close. Yes, the session ends on the 29th of this month, and unfortunately, the bills that were filed in Indiana did not make the crossover date at the end of February and are not currently active. So that is what's happening in Indiana. Let's see, Utah. In Utah, we've got an expungement revision bill that you can support, so definitely participate in that. Now, in Minnesota, there is the legalization bill, of course, or pair of legalization bills that we're following, HF 100 and SF 73. They've been kind of going on the committee circuit. You know, they have to go through 12 committees before they make it to the House floor. And some of these committees have been re-referring them back to previous committees. So lots of amendments and changes are happening there, but definitely those bills are still on the move. So I encourage you to participate in that action alert. Additionally, there is an action alert having to do with reciprocity for state and tribal cannabis programs that you can participate in there. All right, coming back to your comments. We've got some people from Texas. So I did talk about our medical cannabis bill that is on the move from the House to the Senate. I also wanted to mention that there is a bill having to do with penalty reduction. It did pass out of the House committee. It's in the process of enrolling in calendars. We're hoping that it'll be scheduled for the House floor soon. And that we will keep you updated on, but it would reduce the penalties for the possession of cannabis flower, cannabis concentrates, or paraphernalia. It also would direct officers not to arrest and would have certain provisions to expunge any marijuana charges that may be on your record. There's about 27 bills currently filed in Texas, and definitely I encourage you to participate in those action alerts. And you can find a whole write-up on our website, texasnormal.org. Just click the 88th Ledge tab, and you can find all those details there. Okay, Vermont, let's see. There are some bills in Vermont. Let me see. Now, it looks like some of these, okay, there were 2 bills in Vermont that we were tracking, and unfortunately, they did not make the crossover date, so those bills are not currently active. So just an FYI there. And it looks like Michigan is on watching us today. No currently filed legislation that we're tracking in Michigan right now, guys. And I do see someone here from New Jersey. So let's see what I got for you. We've got one that has to do with odor as probable cause, medical access for sickle cell, and then there is one that we oppose that has to do with THC caps. I see North Carolina in the house. Welcome, North Carolina. All right. Looks like in North Carolina, there is both a medical bill and then another bill that has to do with both adult use and medical marijuana. So 2 great bills that you can support there from North Carolina. We've got some people watching from Virginia. And just so you guys know, there's some movement happening today in Virginia. Of course, J.M. Padini is the executive director of Virginia NORML, and they do an update very regularly on what's going on there. So expect a blog post from Virginia NORML or some sort of update sometime today. Let me see if I got anybody else that I missed. All right. I don't see any other states listed here. So I want to tell you guys, thank you so much, of course, for watching. And we've got a lot of great stuff going on. If you go to norml.org/act and you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can see highlighted bills that have already been passed and enacted this session. You can see the type of topics that we're covering. And of course, that dynamic map at the top, hover over your state and you'll be able to see anything that's active there. I, of course, want to also remind you guys to engage with your local chapter. We've got dozens of chapters across the country, and you can go to our chapters tab, see if there's one near you. And if there's not, you can find out how to start a chapter in your state. And last but not least, as a consumer and patient advocacy organization, you know, we are dependent on our funding for viewers like you, as PBS would say. And so I want to encourage all of you to become either a dues paying member or a one-time or recurring donor to help support our work across all of these different states and also at the federal level. And I am looking forward to, on the last Wednesday of the month, we have our federal policy manager come on and join us. His name is Morgan Fox. And so you can look forward to that at the end of this month, getting a federal update from Morgan. So I will see you guys same time, same place next week. I hope you will tune in and see what else is going on across the country. I hope to have a lot more wonderful updates for you. So see you next week, guys.